For years, when we talked about Canadian immigration, it was all about one thing: growth. More people, more workers, more students. Well, that story is changing, big time. The Canadian government just announced a major pivot, stepping away from that rapid expansion and moving towards something totally different: stability. Okay, let's get into what this all means. And this quote right here from the Minister of Immigration, it really says it all. The key words to grab onto are restoring control and sustainable levels. This isn't some minor adjustment, you guys. It's a fundamental rethink of how many people come to Canada and who those people are. So that's the big question on everyone's mind, right? We're going to break down what this plan actually means, look at the new numbers, the new priorities, and the specific policies that are driving this huge shift. And believe me, it's a plan that's going to ripple through everything from our job market to our universities. All right, so first up, let's tackle the big why. Why make such a dramatic change all of a sudden? Well, the government has been pretty blunt about the main reason, and it's not really about permanent residents. It's about another group that has been growing at an absolutely explosive rate. Just look at these numbers. This is where you really see how fast things have been changing. In just 6 years, the portion of temporary residents in Canada, we're talking international students, foreign workers, more than doubled. The government itself called this growth unprecedented, and they're pointing right at the strain this has put on housing, healthcare, and other services as the main reason for hitting the brakes. And that brings us to the government's big goal. They've put a number on it, a really clear, ambitious target. The plan is to wrestle that 7.5% figure all the way back down to below 5% in just 3 years. This single target is what's anchoring this entire strategy. So to really get how big of a deal this is, let's first get a baseline of where things stand right now. Okay, so before we dive into the future, we kind of need to get a handle on the present, right? Let's take a quick snapshot of what Canada's immigration landscape looked like in 2024, just before these new changes start to really take hold. So in 2024, Canada welcomed just over 483,000 new permanent residents. Now, that is a huge number, and it was actually right on track with our previous targets. Make sure you remember this number, because it's going to be a really stark contrast to what we see next. So who are these folks? Well, this chart gives us the breakdown. You can see the huge majority, almost 60%, came in through economic streams. That means they were chosen for their skills and their potential to jump right into the economy. The other big pieces of the pie are family sponsorship and refugees, both of which are, a core part of Canada's identity. Okay, now this is the number that explains everything. While we had about 500,000 new permanent residents, get this, 1.6 million temporary resident permits were issued in that same year. That right there is the heart of the issue the government's trying to tackle. The sheer volume of temporary arrivals has just dwarfed the number of permanent ones. And to put a bit of a human face on all this data, here's a look at where Canada's economic immigrants came from in 2024. India is still the top source country by a pretty wide margin, but you also see the Philippines, Cameroon, China, and Nigeria rounding out the top 5. It just goes to show you the global reach of Canada's programs. All right, so that's the lay of the land right now. But let's get to the main event, the brand new plan for 2026 and beyond. This is where we see that whole stabilization idea turn into actual hard numbers. First up, permanent residence. Now, you might be thinking there's going to be a huge cut here, right? But look at the numbers. The plan is to bring the target down just a little bit for 2025 and then hold it steady at 380,000 a year. So they're not kidding when they say stabilize, not slash. This shows the main focus of this new plan is definitely not on cutting permanent immigration. But now, temporary residence. Whoa. This is where things get really dramatic. The target for new temporary arrivals is set to just plummet from over 670,000 in 2025 down to 385,000 in 2026. This isn't stabilization. This is a massive reduction. And it's the main lever the government is pulling to get that overall temporary population down to their 5% target. So where exactly are these cuts happening? Well, this breaks it down for us. The number of new international students slashed by almost half, and new temporary workers cut by more than a third. I mean, these are absolutely massive shifts that are going to be felt in a big way by colleges, universities, and businesses all across the country. But look, this plan isn't just about dropping the numbers. It's also about being a whole lot smarter, more strategic about who we select to come to Canada. The goal is to match immigration much more closely with what the country actually needs, and to offer more stability to the people who are already here. And you can see that strategy right here in this chart. Just look at how the mix of permanent residents is set to change by 2027. That economic class slice of the pie gets way bigger, growing to nearly 2/3 of all new permanent residents. The message couldn't be clearer. The top priority is selecting immigrants who can fill specific labor shortages and boost the economy.
So this is basically the playbook. The focus is zeroed in on talent for high-demand jobs. Think healthcare, tech, the skilled trades, and this is really important. They want to create clearer paths to permanent residency for skilled temporary workers who are already here and contributing. There's also a bigger role for the provinces to pick immigrants for their own local needs and a huge push for Francophone immigration.
And speaking of specific goals, that commitment to Francophone communities is a big one, and it's backed up by some serious targets. You can see on this timeline, it's not just a vague promise. It's a clear, rising goal year after year, with the aim of hitting 12% by 2029. This is all about a long-term strategy to really strengthen these communities across the country. Okay, so to help smooth out this massive shift, the government is rolling out two big one-time programs. First, they're going to speed up the process for about 115,000 people with protected status who are already in Canada to become permanent residents. And second, they're fast-tracking another 33,000 skilled temporary workers onto a path to permanence. The idea here is to create some stability for people who've already put down roots in Canada, all while the bigger system gets recalibrated. So, there you have it. That's the plan in a nutshell. It's a huge shift, moving away from just growth for growth's sake to a system that's much more managed and, what the government hopes, is sustainable. It's designed to take the pressure off services while still bringing in the skills that Canada needs. But it leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? As Canada tries to strike this new balance, what's it all going to mean for the country's economy, its communities, and really its future?